rare, these morels?
Yes and no. And the reason why I say that is, down York Region way, Toronto, of course, you're not going to find a whole heck of a lot of them. They do exist. They seem to like to play the game of hide and seek. There's so many people that go out there every spring and they always get blanked. They may find other things like dryad saddle. It's a different type of mushroom, or but for whatever reason, more people than not always get blanked when they go out searching for the mighty morel. But then there's a few other people that have their little honey holes, and they're not going to share that information with anyone. And I certainly understand it, because with a lot of people out there searching, if you give away your location, you're going to be lucky if you get any. So
right.
But yeah, finding a nice stash of them seems to be, it's very difficult.
Right. So these are edible. And do you eat the whole mushroom, just the top? How do you, or just like any other mushroom?
Like any other mushroom, really. When you always use a knife when you are cutting them from the ground, because that way you're not disturbing the mycelium that is connecting that mushroom to the earth down below. And that's, you could say almost that's the lifeline for most mushrooms, is the mycelium that goes through the soil. So if you yank it right out, you're going to damage that mycelium and kill any chance of that coming back the following year. So, but yes, that entire mushroom you can eat. Always cook them first. Never eat them raw. It's certainly not like the button mushroom in a grocery store. And I've stuffed those. You can make like cut them in half and stuff them and bake them that way. There's all sorts of things you can do with them. But of course, it's trying to find enough to make an entire meal out of that. Sometimes is the challenge.
So the only saving grace then for me from next year is it was the blade of the lawnmower that hacked them off. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for next year. Now, you have an edibles cookbook, right?
Yes, I do. The foraging cookbook.
Okay, so I'll put a link to that in my blog for people if they're fortunate enough to have some of these, and if they want to try them. I know a lot of people are really leery about eating wild mushrooms. And there is an app out there called Shroomify or something, right? Does that ring a bell with you?
There are many apps out there. And I've heard so many complaints from so many people about apps in terms of identifying mushrooms or wild plants, and for good reason, because sometimes they do make an error. There are some good ones out there, but there are none that I have heard that are totally foolproof. And for that reason, I always say to people, always do a double check, always cross-reference twice, 3 times with other credible resources. Otherwise, you're going to make a mistake, and especially with mushrooms, that mistake could cost you your life.
Okay, so good to know, good advice. If in doubt, don't eat it. Somebody told me that in France, when you pick mushrooms, you can take it to the pharmacy, and the pharmacists in France can identify mushrooms. I don't know if that's true, but I thought that was pretty interesting. All right.
Some probably would. Yeah.
All right, so this is ostrich fern, and this was in that nice big ditch that we have down the side of our ridge in amongst all those boulders. And these are actually quite huge. But early in the spring, these are fiddleheads, right? So,
correct.
But not every fern is a fiddlehead. Like all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs, right? So not every fern is a fiddlehead. But ostrich.
Exactly.
Ostrich ones are. So
ostrich ferns, they grow from a crown that looks like almost like an upside down kind of pine cone.
Yes.
And sometimes you may not see it because it could be covered with moss or it's buried under earth, but it always grows from a crown. There are always minimum 4, but up to 8 fronds that grow upward. But before they get very tall, you want to get them when they're very tight curls, and those are actually called croziers. So when they are at that crozier stage, that's when they're good. And I always let individuals know, never take all of them from one crown, because if you do, you're going to kill its chance of reproducing next year. Okay. So if there's let's say 6 coming from that one crown, never take more than 3 ever. Always leave at least half, so you can come back year after year and they'll always be there.
Okay, and I'm not going to tell anybody where these are either. They're just on my property, and So, okay. So next spring I can have these, and if Tustin's careful, we can have morels. All right, next.
Exactly.
So this got a little bit of frost because even though it was warm, when we went out on the Saturday, earlier that week, we had that weird cold. So these were great. This is wild grapevine, right?
Yep, Vitis riparia. And the wild grapevine, obviously it's a vine. It grows in forests along edges of woodlands. They actually are in subdivisions now because all it takes is one bird to eat the seed, fly into the subdivision, drop that seed, and next thing you know, you have it growing. So amazing source of food. It's quite versatile in terms of when the tendrils grow from the vine where it's growing to hang on. Those young tendrils are very citrusy. They're very tasty. Those are edible. No cooking required. The leaves, once they get larger, you can use them to make all sorts of meals. The Greeks have for centuries made, I'm going to say this wrong because I can't pronounce it right, but dolmares or dolmares. So you can have like a rice mixture and just roll it up, and you can put it into a baking dish, put a sauce on, cover it with cheese. Oh my gosh, it's so yummy.
It's the Greek
And
equivalent
then of course, yeah.
And I
Well,
did.
my God.
Sorry,
You go to the international section of if you go to the international section of a grocery store,
yes,
they actually sell grapevine leaves in tin cans.
Oh, okay. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. So I did taste these, and they are tasty. At the time, like the conversation you and I had was, you could just throw one of these on a sandwich instead of lettuce, and it was actually good. So that goes back to one of the pieces of the conversation we had. This won't solve food insufficiency, but if you're unable to afford highly nutritious food, you can add it to food that might be less nutrient dense and beef it up. So a couple of these on a sandwich with some canned tuna, you might be okay. And honestly, they tasted good. So I'm not telling stories out of school here. All right, this, if I remember, this is herb root. What is this?
Herb Robert. Herb Robert. Got it. Herb Robert.
Yep. And this is from my bush out back. And
it's in the geranium family.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I know there's a bit of a delay there. So it is edible, but this falls under the category of don't eat a lot of it. There are some foods that you can eat. But when it comes to wild food, first of all, if anybody's new at this, they should never go overboard or eat too much of something, because of course too much of a good thing can be a bad thing as well. I mean, after all, you know what happens if you eat too many prunes or if you eat too many dates. It has some repercussions.
Yes.
So, and it's the same with wild food.
Okay. So how would somebody use this
with this? Basically, you're just going to toss it in with a few other greens that you find desirable, because these do not taste that great, in my opinion. And my taste buds are as far off the North American diet as most people I know. So when I say that, I like to get it for the flavonoids and for some of the constituents in it that are really good for our health. But yeah, apart from that, I'll just take it and I'll add it in with other greens when I'm making a nice sandwich or soup, stews, that kind of thing.
Okay, and I'll be honest, I did taste this. Was not a fan. Was not a fan.
No.
Is there a way to is there a way to use it like an herb in a dressing to make it more palatable, or is it just, a couple of bites, get your flavonoids, and be done with it?
That's it.
All right. Or if you're, you're overwhelmed by the zombie apocalypse, instead of eating this, if it causes diarrhea, maybe give it to the zombies. I don't know. All right.
You didn't have a fair bit though.
You got pretty excited about the turkey tails that I found, but these obviously are dried from last year. Turkey tails aren't in season until fall, right? Did I get that?
Usually late August into September. That's when all the new growth has started. get to know proper identification of turkey tails, because they are in the family of Trametes. And Trametes, there are many different forms of these or species of these that do grow on decaying logs, just like this one. So most of them you probably could consume, and you're not going to end up with too many problems, but you don't want to do that because some of them will cause stomach upset. Now, having said that, you're not going to eat these because they're rubber-like. They're not, they just certainly don't have the texture that is palatable. So you would dry these, you would grind them up as best as you can, and you would add it to your coffee grounds when you're percolating your coffee. They are high, they're very high on the oxidization list, like SOD, or not the oxide, like full of oxygen.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's really, really, really important, because a lot of people's bodies are acidic, and that's not a good thing, because that opens up an invitation to a whole plethora of different health ailments, including cancer. So we are basically like science. We have to be pH level, balanced, or in times when we are highly acidic and we are suffering from a certain ailment, we do have to get ourselves into that alkaline level. And this is one item that can do that for us. So yeah, so they are very powerful.
All right, so this isn't meal worthy, but this is health worthy.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This chaga are the most I guess next to shiitake and reishi, but they are highly sought after, because in many different countries around the world, these are actually used as in conjunction with treatment for cancer, and in some cases, some people are actually treating their cancer solely with these turkey tails.
Wow. So because these are dry right now and they're basically last year, do they have any nutrient value? So just leave them till, okay. All right. So
yeah,
in August, I'm going to go out, fight the bugs, take some pictures and send them to you and go, Karen, should I harvest these now? Okay. Next one. Okay. I remember this one. This is garlic mustard, right? Now, the pictures I took were, as usual, in my usual fabulous photographic style, which means they were completely unusable. So I found this one on iStock, and this does it justice. And when you said taste it, that it tasted like garlic, I was prepared for a mild garlic flavor. This is garlic. Like there's no doubt. It is like chomping on a raw garlic clove. And it's the mustard family.
Pretty much.
Totally edible.
Yep. It is, actually, I just recently posted a video to YouTube about garlic mustard. There are some really, really interesting facts about this plant. Apart from the fact that it gives you omega-3 and a whole wealth of flavonoids and other minerals and vitamins such as vitamin C. Not only is the aerial part of the plant edible, that's all the stem, the flowers, the seeds, the leaves, that's all garlic. Or garlic-like in flavor, but the roots are horseradish-like.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so when you take the roots, you can actually make, and I have a recipe for that on my website, making your own horseradish with garlic mustard roots. So there are a lot of people that have the hate song for this plant because it's invasive, but there's a lot of science that's coming out right now saying that it actually should be left alone, because what happens is that when left to its own devices over a period of 3 or 4 years, every plant is here for a reason. It's not here just by happenstance. Every plant is here for a specific purpose. And if you start ripping out all the garlic mustard, yeah, it was introduced here, but it has evolved here over the last 300 years. So it's very much a part of our environment out there now. So if you leave it alone for 2-3 years, it actually will start decreasing in any given area. So because it's here, it's doing a specific purpose. Now for the garlic mustard, I don't know what that purpose is right now. But once it's served its purpose, then it just starts to disappear a little bit. So it'll still be there a little bit. and then unfortunately, when people come along and they just rip it out because they just don't want it reproducing, what they're doing is they're sending messages to the ground saying, uh-oh, we need more garlic mustard now because it's all been ripped out of this area. So that literally tens of thousands of seeds that have fallen into the soil from the years gone by, they're going to start growing because they're there to do a job.
Okay, so that makes sense to me, actually. So I will tell people, this is not the leaf you want to put on a sandwich. And this is really not the leaf you want to chop up and just toss into a salad with your romaine, because it is serious garlic. So what could you do with this? My first thought was like a pesto, or throw in a little bit and use it as pesto. Is that what you do with it?
Yeah, the vast majority of people will use it as a pesto, but not the only green in that pesto, because it will be very overpowering and that pesto no longer will be desirable, really.
Right. Okay.
So it needs to be neutralized with parsley or basil. Parsley is usually a good pair for it.
Okay. All right. A little bit of a good thing. All right. Queen Anne's lace. I took some great pictures of Queen Anne's lace, but I used this one from iStock because what I took pictures of was the stalk and the root, which people might not immediately recognize as Queen Anne's lace. And you told me that the Queen Anne's lace is really the original carrot. And when you pull up the root, it smells like a carrot. I ate it and the root tastes like a carrot. So I actually would have no problem pulling the roots up of I'll use the flowers in a bouquet because that would be funky. And then I would actually wash the roots and put them into a salad because they were that tasty, that actually tasted that good. So,
but you'd want the roots from the first year plant, which is just the leaf. Like this, the first year plant doesn't produce the flower. That comes in the second year of growth. By the time the second year of growth, those roots go from being fleshy to almost wood-like. So you're not going to be able to eat it like a carrot at that point. But yeah, it definitely is. This is its Latin name is Daucus carota, which is wild carrot, and it is actually the progenitor to the carrot as we know it today.
Okay, so
and those flowers make, I have the recipe on my website, they make a killer tasting jelly. Wow.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And a non-alcoholic cordial as well.
What's they
are.
Why would I want
I'll have to say
alcoholic, Karen? Why would I want anything without alcohol in it? We can't have that. Okay, so I'll make sure I put that link there. All right, so let's go to the next picture. Took some good pictures of this, but obviously the red cone, the red flower that I took a picture of is last year's. So I have a bunch of this sumac, and it was as citrusy as you said, even last year's.
Oh,
this will be a what, August-ish? The fresh cones come out.
Yeah. Well, actually, they're out now. I'm finding a lot of things are out way before they should be. I'm finding it quite surprising, but there are some new growth of the red sumac right now. But yeah, I'd still wait until get toward the end of July so it gets to its full potential in terms of maturation. But yeah, that's actually a seed head. There's hundreds and hundreds of seeds in there. Very, very citrusy. You can actually just cut that seed head, put it into a pitcher of water, and you can either sun infuse it or just let it sit in the fridge for a few days, and you'll get that wonderful, wonderful flavor of a citrusy flavor. A lot of people make what they call sumac aid, just like lemonade, and sometimes just blending it with other flavors. You can like a little bit of lemon, add a little lemon there, some maple syrup. It's just, when you have things like this and they're free, it can be this really cool, creator of new taste in the kitchen. It's lots of fun.
Right. Well, I'm not going to lie. I did taste it. It absolutely had a delicious citrus taste. The seeds in there are wicked hard. And my first thing that comes to my mind is pomegranates. It's like, wow, they're delicious, but what a lot of work to eat them. But the infusing in the tea idea, or in some water, that's a great idea. So okay, I could do that. That's not too funky granola eating, sandal wearing out there for me. I'll try that.
That's something that you can't. I was just going to say with the red sumac, as that is, you can't eat it per se. if you have, you can grind it down to as fine as you possibly can, and then you can use that to make muffins, which is actually good. But if your grinder doesn't get every seed, you've got to be careful when you're eating those muffins, because all it's going to take is eating that, you know, getting that seed the wrong way, and it could literally crack a tooth if you have any weaknesses with a tooth. So you got to be careful when it comes to actually baking with that.
Okay. So some kind of extra fine grind. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Another picture, Steele. You and I talked about these. I have tons of puffballs, and I don't have to go out in the bush looking for them. For whatever reason, they're all over my lawn. And I've always known you could eat puffballs, but I never did. But they really are a tasty fungus, a tasty fungi. But you have to be careful. So a lot of people know you can eat puffballs. A lot of people just don't because they don't know. So your tip was what? Don't wash them with water, brush them off because they're like a sponge. And B, cut into the center of them and make sure they're perfectly white.
Yeah. Yeah. So the pictures we're looking at right now,
Yep.
those are categorically what's called the giant puffball. And so, yeah, they're always at their best when, like I say, you cut it, slice it, and as long as they're white, you're good to go. Now, when you're dealing with the smaller puffballs, they would not be in your lawn. They would be in the bush because they do grow in forests, and they're about 10 centimeters, 15 centimeters tall at best.
Okay.
Usually actually probably more to 6 to 10 centimeters, but they are much smaller. And those ones you got to be a little bit careful about, because even though some of those are edible, there's some that actually, if you cut it in half, they are naturally brown, and you don't want to eat those. But as far as these big giant puffballs go, absolutely loaded with your B complex vitamins, vitamin D, very healthy. The usual go-to way of using these is you slice them up and you fry it up in butter. A lot of people like that. You can deep fry them if you like deep fried foods. Okay, so now we're taking really good healthy food and turning it into not so healthy. But hey, we only live once, so having a little bit of deep fried food once in a while, why not? You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because we have plenty of these, and again, Tustin loves to mow these because when you hit these, they go swing and go shooting across the yard. So it's more like a sport than foraging for us. All right, next one. So this is also from the backyard. That's your hand, not mine, because I took the picture. So this is literally what we learned about back in school when the Europeans came over and suffered from scurvy. Right, this is how they avoid it. So, and you said don't boil water. You have to steep it in non-boiled water. So let's talk about this one a little bit.
Or you can boil it, but let the temperature fall for a little while, like at least 10 minutes before you steep the pine needles in there.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is that usually one of the reasons why historically, and even now, people want to enjoy a nice cup of pine tea is for the vitamin C values that it possesses, which are very high. But when we make a tea with water that is just boiled, the water is sitting there. Now I'm going to lose the metric system, go back to Fahrenheit. I know it in Fahrenheit, but not Celsius. So water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, but vitamin C starts to denature at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can only imagine by the time your leaves or your needles are steeping in that water, so probably for the first 10 minutes, you're losing a fair bit of that vitamin C. So therefore it becomes redundant for if you were drinking that for the vitamin C value. Same with rose hips. A lot of people love rose hip tea and they're doing it for the vitamin C value. But when you're using boiled water, it denatures to some degree. So so I always like to just boil the water, let it sit 10 minutes, and then infuse those needles to make a very tasty cup of tea. So yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll keep that one in mind.
And you can gather those needles. Oh no, it's okay. I was just saying you could gather the needles, dry them out, grind them into a powder, and use it in all sorts of applications. I came up with pine needle cookies a few years ago, and I've made them for so many people over the years, and I've not come across one person yet who has not loved the pine cookie.
Right. So that goes back to adding these wild edibles to food, not making it the single source, but an ingredient among many. So I really like that idea when we were out for our walk. All right. This is a fungi and it only grows on hardwood trees, right? And this is one of those nutrient values versus potential meal value, right? Medicinal and healing.
Absolutely. It's in the Phalaenus, in the Phalaenus family. And they are very dense in nutrients. To look at it, you wouldn't think so. It just looks like some ugly growth on a tree. And so when you remove it from the tree, though, you'd want to break it down as best as you can. That would involve a hacksaw. And then again, you would infuse that in a beverage, or try to break it down as best as you can. I've not even been able to do it myself, to try to break it down to a point where I can put it and create a powder out of it. So I just, no, I'll just infuse it in a beverage.
Okay. All right. So drink it. Yes. Too much work to eat it. But why would somebody actually go to that much? If it's that difficult, like what's the value of going to that much effort for this weird looking thing on the tree?
There's a lot of research that's come out of the University of Calgary showing how medicinal it is for us, in terms of blood pressure, helping keep our blood pressure at its optimum. But I mean, people can't be using these. This is one thing that I need to stress, because I don't think it's going to be an issue so much with for your audience, but when you go on social media, you see so many people saying, like for example, use this, your blood pressure is going to be great. Well, no, because people sometimes are desperate looking for solutions, and it could send them out into the forest, and next thing you know, they're causing themselves more harm than good, because you have to know exactly what your condition is. And you can't just start, and if you're on medications, you cannot be using interacting these with certain medications, because it could end up, it can end up in a bad situation. So but in terms of nutrition, though, you're going to get your B complex, and you're going to get vitamin D.
Okay. So a lot of people are going to read this. Well, then why are you telling me about this, Cynthia? For me, the fun part was the hike and learning what was there. So if people are not, people who are going to watch this, who are retiring, or for whatever reason, those 7 people that follow my blog, this, for me, this isn't about necessarily embracing all of these wild foods. For me, the fun part was learning what was in the backyard and getting outside. So, okay, I get it.
And I think what you were saying about learning too, that brings in another aspect of this, because a lot of my friends, they kind of settle back and go, well, you know what, I'm hitting retirement, I'm retiring now, I can relax. So that whole aspect of, I don't have to learn any more information to keep my job current. I don't have to learn, and I hear that a couple of times now, and it kind of makes me cringe, because if we don't keep learning throughout our entire life, this muscle up here is going to go into atrophy. And it has been linked that the more we learn, the more we keep thinking, it is part of the puzzle to help thwart off Alzheimer's and dementia. So we got to keep this going. And what better way? Get out there and just learn plants in general, not just edible ones.
Well, I honestly found the whole hike pretty fascinating. So that was good. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So these are horsetail, right? Is it a horsetail fern?
Yep.
And
it is the world's oldest fern.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's right. We did talk about that. It used to be much bigger, but yes, it really is the world's oldest fern. And we didn't talk about this from a, hey, let's eat it. We talked about this from the value of brushing your teeth with it.
Yep.
Because it's an abrasive.
It contains a very, it is very, it is. So it certainly has no value in terms of food, but I take it, I dry it, I grind it down. I do add it to certain tea blends, but one of my most favorite things to do with it is I make a tooth powder. I do not use toothpaste. So to some baking soda, I will add some horsetail powder, as well as some cinnamon, because cinnamon, of course, is antibacterial. And that's how I brush my teeth. And the horsetail is so incredibly high in silica. It is exceedingly beneficial for the enamel on our teeth. But as a beverage, it's great for bone health. It's great for skin and nail and hair health.
Oh, Okay, so if I'm using this as a beverage, can I just dry the needles, or is it like the pine needles? You leave
No,
it,
you
bring
can
them
use it fresh.
fresh. Okay.
You can use, yep, you can use it fresh if you're using it as a beverage. Um, the taste is nothing to write home about. It's not, it doesn't taste horrible. It's not great. It's just like, why am I drinking this then? So you may want to, this is why I like to dry it, and I will add it to, like I have mint. I love mint. I add mint to everything. So if I add the horsetail to my mint, then it gives me a reason to want to drink it.
Right. And then you get the benefits of both the mint and the stuff for your hair and your teeth. Okay. It's just
Yeah.
a neat plant. Like, in general, if like, even if you don't, brush your teeth with it, or put it into a beverage, honestly, it really looks neat amongst other plants. So I always like this plant. All right, next one. Oh yes, dandelions. We all know you can make, you can eat the leaves. You make dandelion wine. Right now, the geese in my front lawn that have arrived have hoovered every daisy or dandelion head to be had. Somebody told me if you gather up enough of the heads, uh, you can make it into honey, or the equivalent, daisy, the equivalent of honey, and it's equally as sweet. I don't know. You tell me.
No, you can't make honey. Only bees can make honey. But
Okay.
what people love to do is they infuse the flower into honey to enhance the flavor of the honey. So it's like one of the where I like to get my honey from. I like to support this guy who has an independent business on Yonge Street there, just north of 89, just north of
Oh, I know what
89.
you mean. Yep.
Yeah. And I love going to his place, especially later in the year, because then he's got his buckwheat honey. So I mean, so he's getting the bees targeting just the buckwheat plants, and of course that honey is darker. So using dandelion flowers, it enhances the flavor of the honey, and it alters the color a little bit. So it actually makes the honey that much better for us.
Okay. And I've also heard that for people who suffer from allergies, you should be using local honey, because you get used to, because the bees are using the weeds and the flowers that you're allergic to locally, and it helps
Yeah.
build up your immune system and reduce your allergies next year. So you should be using, if you, wherever possible, use local honey.
Oh yeah, and absolutely. There's I remember it was years ago where there was this big thing about the 100-mile diet.
Mhm.
And it is so true, because theoretically we should be eating and consuming only foods and beverages that come from about they say roughly 100-mile radius of where you live, because in our area there's pathogens, and the plants are always fighting certain pathogens or benefiting from some of them, as are we. So therefore the food that grows within that 100-mile radius is actually best for our body. So if you know what, eating a cabbage that was grown out in the marsh is by far more beneficial for us than eating a cabbage that was grown in California. It's that cabbage in California isn't going to do for us as half as much as what a local cabbage will do.
Okay, so great reasons to support local. Um,
Yeah.
Now I was shocked, but you can eat the entire daisy. The roots, the
Yeah.
stems, the flowers. You pickle the flowers, right?
Oh yeah. It was years and years and years ago when my youngest son at the time, he he thought it was kind of weird that I was introducing weeds into our diet. And at one point he says, no, he says, please, never any flowers. And of course that to me was, okay, game on, let's go. What can I do?
A red flag to a bull. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, don't ever do that to a mama. Um, so I thought, okay, he loves anything and everything that is pickled. So one day I'm looking at the empty, there was one pickle left in the Strubs jar, and we all loved our Strubs pickles. And I thought, whoa, I'm keeping this pickle juice, and I'm going to put all the flowers in there, stuff it as much best as I can, but enough so there's still some, liquidy movement there. And I left them in there, and I hid them in the back of the fridge. And after 3 weeks, I tried one. I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And because the petals folded over, it was almost caper-like in terms of appearance. Not quite, but that's the best description I can give. And so I would throw that onto the salads, and and he was like, "What's this in here? This tastes really good." Oh, flowers.
We eat,
Daisy flowers.
yeah, we eat nasturtiums and we eat the blossoms from zucchini. So, and violets, I mean,
Yeah.
they sugarcoat violets to make them edible. So I'm not surprised. Now, one thing we did talk about is, if you find some of these and you're going to do this, don't ruin the nutrient value by using crappy vinegars. So best thing to use is probably Phil Singer's 100% organic apple
Yeah.
cider vinegar,
Yeah.
and it's
A
localish.
lot of people, yeah, and a lot of people always say Bragg's. So Bragg's is a very, very popular brand of organic apple cider vinegar. And I certainly don't have anything against Bragg's, but we do have an Ontario producer of organic apple cider vinegar, and I would much rather see my money go to Phil Singer's before I give it to Bragg's.
Right.
Sorry, Bragg's, but gotta support local.
Yeah. And we, let's be clear, we're not getting any endorsements from Phil Singers, but we both, if we go back to that whole kind of local lifestyle thing, that when you're retired, you have, maybe people do it all the time. I don't have that kind of time. Now I do, to research and get the bits and pieces and take the ingredient that's a little bit better. So, and I like the idea of supporting local. So Phil Singer's is local and it's organic and it's really good. Oddly enough, I went to the farm market the other day and found ice pressed olive oil, organic olive oil. So ice pressed is apparently better than even cold pressed. And it certainly keeps all the vitamins in it that heat destroys. So I was really impressed with that. So we did see some things out in the bush that I could actually infuse into oil. I didn't have all the pictures of them, but I could infuse into oil and get the benefit that way and have the quality of the olive oil. So could that garlic mustard be turned into an infusible oil?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure that when you gather any plant that you want to transform into an oil, that it is, let's say, at least 11 o'clock in the morning, because there can't be any dew or moisture. You'd want to let it sit out for a little bit, just making sure that it is bone dry. Now, if we were making an infused vinegar, if there's just that tiny bit of moisture on it, it's not going to make a lick of difference because it's going into vinegar. But when it's going into oil, any moisture means that oil is going to go rancid on you and you're going to get mold. And that's the last thing that you want to have happen. So, but yeah, you can infuse it into an oil, infuse any of these wild edibles, and then you can have a collection of different oils, a collection of different vinegars, and mix and match. And you can be this alchemist in your kitchen and come up with some really, really cool flavors.
Okay, that is, so I'm more likely to do that than go out and turn my lawn into a salad. So, okay.
Yep.
Last one. So I'm going to give fun fact here, and I'm going to give credit to my buddy Chris, because he was one of the ones who started. He posted 2 pictures of these ramps. This is also a spring crop in there with the early morels. Like, this is even ahead of the morels, right? This is about the same time as the fiddleheads.
They usually beat the fiddleheads by about maybe 2 weeks. They're the first. So
all right. So I know
but they do persist.
Okay, I know I have
they
these
do
in the
persist.
backyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I do every year is, going back to the vinegar thing again, is I will get, I always keep my bottles, and I cut up a lot of the wild leeks or the ramps, put them into the vinegar. And then in the summer, when the local garlic is at our farmers markets, I literally buy tons and tons of garlic bulbs. And then I cut up the garlic and add that to the vinegar with the wild leeks. I let it sit until November or, early December. And I can't express how incredible the taste of that vinegar has become.